When you look at a Norman Rockwell illustration, do you see Vermont? Turns out you should. With a new show opening at the Shelburne Museum, we're learning about an American icon's impactful Vermont years today on Across the Fence. Hello, Vermont. In 1938, Norman Rockwell packed his paints and headed north to Arlington, Vermont. At 44, some of his best-known work was still ahead of him. A family gathered around the Thanksgiving table, painted in Vermont. Rosie the Riveter, his 19-year-old Vermont neighbor. A friendly cop counseling a young runaway in a diner, painted in Arlington. And yet, Rockwell's Vermont story has seldom been told. That all changed this weekend when Norman Rockwell, at home in Vermont, opened at the Shelburne Museum. Joining me to talk about it is Carolyn Bauer, the Marna and Chuck Davis Curator of American Art at the Shelburne Museum and the curator of the new Rockwell exhibition. Carolyn Bauer, it's super nice to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited about this one. So let's start with Arlington. What drew Rockwell to southern Vermont? I had no idea that Rockwell had ever spent any time in Vermont. I think it's so fascinating.
And you're not alone in that thought. Norman Rockwell and his wife Mary in 1938 were looking for a change. They were living in New Rochelle, New York. That was the kind of bustling suburbia at the time, and they were looking for a slower pace of life. They were touring southern Vermont and really by happenstance had a night stay in Arlington at the Colonial Inn, and within 24 hours they had purchased a farmhouse. A real Vermont real estate story.
That is. It's funny, it's still a familiar story, right? You
Right.
come to Vermont, you become enchanted, and the next thing you know, you're buying a farmhouse.
Quickly, too.
Okay.
And within a year, they had moved up permanently as full-time residents. There he found, the idyllic landscape, a community that's tight-knit, self-reliant folk. And he was inspired by that with his works and by the people he met there, the Vermonters.
Yeah.
Those people became models for his work during his 10-year stay here in Vermont.
That's amazing.
And he was not alone in finding Arlington a place of inspiration. He was surrounded by other Saturday Evening Post illustrators. That was a weekly publication, very popular at the time.
Yep.
And those artists include Gene Pelham, John Atherton, Mead Schaefer, and they formed a community, a very collaborative group there in Arlington, Vermont, this very small town that now per capita had the most amount of illustrators.
Was it just happenstance that they all ended up in Arlington? Was it someone got there first and then the next thing you know, they've got the cute farmhouse so everyone's coming up and looking at theirs? And I mean, how did it grow around that particular town? Does anyone know?
It started a bit kismetly. Gene Pelham went there with his wife to start a family seeking a small rural lifestyle. Again, Rockwell then looked for a quieter lifestyle himself and source of inspiration. Others like Atherton and Mead Schaefer, they're avid fishermen and were looking for engaging with that landscape. And they all did know each other previously, and so I'm sure by word of mouth as well.
Yeah.
They sought each other's counsel and where to move to.
And it all starts showing up in some of their work too, right? I mean, so this moment in time for these artists, we're seeing farmhouses and silos showing up in the work. We're seeing, fishing motifs, and there's a piece by Atherton, right? They're called Fisherman's Paradise.
Correct. Again, inspired directly by his passion for fly fishing in particular, of which he even wrote a book about, a real expert. I mean, they were looking for these sources of inspiration, and that in Arlington, they found it.
Yeah.
Rockwell said he was searching for, quote, a real sense of place. And in Arlington, he found that, and these other artists as well.
Yeah, and so this is pre-war, right? So it's 1938. So is it something also about the angst of the time? I mean, it's like, does Vermont feel soothing, comforting? Like, what's the vibe?
Great question, because America at this time was going through a great period of change. We weathered through the Great Depression. We went through World War II. We're adapting to a post-war era. And Vermont itself was changing its identity. Early in the 20th century, it was seen as kind of old-fashioned, isolated, and it changed during those course of those periods because it was seen as resilient, neighborly, this civic duty that Vermonters had ingrained in them. And so Americans were turning and finding inspiration in those virtues which these artists then depicted. These small genre moments, everyday life, kids running around outside, the family eating together. These very wholesome, what we think of as nostalgic moments, but were in fact what the nation was yearning for at that period of great change.
And so how did you tackle all of this in the show? Like, what's the story you're telling about the influence of Vermont on Rockwell and in these other artists?
I think just how personal it was to Rockwell. When he came to Arlington, he didn't just seek inspiration and ask the school teacher or the children to pose for him. He became ingrained in that community. He attended the swing dances. He purchased part of a local cemetery to be engaged there. He was judging art fairs.
Wait, did you just say he purchased part of the cemetery?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so now that's an interesting tidbit.
Literally putting down roots in Arlington.
Well, as we say in Vermont, right? You have to have people in the graveyard if you're actually going to be a Vermonter.
Exactly.
So he wanted to have some authenticity there. Well, I also mentioned some of the iconic pieces that Rockwell painted in Vermont. So like Rosie the Riveter, and then the Four Freedoms, right? And which is one of the ones, the depiction of the Thanksgiving table. What do you notice about his work at this period? Because he's here from 38, 39 to how late? Like, when did he leave?
1953, so about 14 years.
Yeah, so throughout the war.
Correct. And it was one of his his most prolific period of work. And some of those key masterpieces we've know so well about Rockwell. The Willie Gillis series during the war, Rosie the Riveter, Four Freedoms, all reflecting the war period. We see at the end, the last work he created at Vermont was Young Girl with a Shiner. And that was one of the last models. So, over 175 Saturday Evening Post covers were done during his 10-year stay here in Vermont. It was quite prolific. And I think, again, because he was able to find that real sense of place, he felt that he can find every type of American in Arlington, he said, that it was just this wealth of inspiration, as well as the artists he surrounded himself with. And that is what this exhibition is looking to do.
Make connections between their work and then the place at this moment in time.
And how being a part of a collaborative artistic community helped inspire these works. Four Freedoms was due in large part to his friendship with Mead Schaefer, who went with him to Washington, D.C. to see if these works could, be purchased by the Treasury before the Post sent them out one by one. So remarkable. He needed these friendships, these collaborators. Gene Pelham was a studio assistant, but also a good friend that helped him get the models and the props. And so all of his success was also due to the success of his friends.
Yeah, and then it's neat, we can be thinking when we look at some of these paintings that these are also Vermonters showing up. Like, I loved the fact that Rosie the Riveter is a 19-year-old Vermont girl from Arlington, Vermont. It's pretty great. Did he ever talk about Vermont?
Absolutely.
Yeah? What did he say?
Again, finding that it was the sense of place, that this was a new home for him, but it was also something that he was living and important to him. The fact that he was going to art fairs and judging at that time. He was connecting himself to this place.
And he stayed connected.
And he
because
did.
He ended up coming back in the 1950s and did some commissioned work. And these are in the show too. Tell us about these.
Yes. So he and his family moved to Stockbridge, Massachusetts, 1954. But by the next year, he was back up in Barre, Vermont. Rock of Ages Corporation asked for him to create some works that would be part of their national advertising campaign. They're and still are a very robust company of granite and memorial business. And he created in 1955 a Kneeling Girl, a painting of a young girl kneeling by a memorial, which has the characteristic highly detailed brushwork by Rockwell. Very sentimental piece. And a few years later, in '63, they asked him to come back, create The Craftsman, another painting that we have both the sketch, a cartoon, large one-to-one painting match, and the finished work.
Yeah, and so we've got both the painter and the sketch. What I think is really wonderful about this one, especially in the context of Barre, is it's not just celebrating the monuments themselves and what they're making, but it's also celebrating those artisans, which is really celebrating a really important part of Barre community and Barre history.
Correct, and Vermont history. I mean, this industry is very important to this state. But yes, he humanizes and the characters, the people, who were in that last painting, the craftsman, that sitter, that model was George Severite, a Scottish American who worked at Rock of Ages at that time and was an engraver. And so having someone who knew how to properly hold the tools to sit in that industry, being bathed by that light.
And so the Rock of Ages is now owned by, I think, Polycor.
Correct.
Right? Polycor Inc. And they donated these to the Shelburne Museum just a few years ago.
Yeah, Shelburne Museum is very excited and grateful that these 3 works are now part of our permanent collection. And they are all on view in this exhibition. So it's the first time visitors can see all 3 at Shelburne Museum at once.
Great. Well, what is your favorite thing about this new exhibition?
I think I am most excited that this is such a personal story. Vermont was personal to Rockwell. He knew it well. He was ingrained in this community, and they feel authentic. Many Rockwell paintings, again, have these, they pull at your heartstrings. They feel nostalgic. But here they feel authentic because he's depicting a place and a group of people that are innately Vermont.
Yeah, and now we can have a new association with these paintings because by virtue of our understanding of the lives that we live here in Vermont, we can now see ourselves in these works, even though these works date back decades.
Correct.
I find that to be so wonderful. Okay, so anything else that folks should know about that is going on at Shelburne Museum this summer?
We're busy and we have new exhibitions beyond Norman Rockwell at home in Vermont. We also have Varied and Alive, new and unseen treasures from the collection. We have outdoor sculpture, Carl D'Alvia monoliths, and On Point, needlepoint from the Garthwaite family collection.
So many good things. And of course, there's going to be concerts on the green. I mean, Shelburne Museum in the summertime, absolutely a place you need to be. It's one of my favorite places to be. Norman Rockwell at home in Vermont is supported by M&T Charitable Foundation and Maple Fields and runs at the Shelburne Museum through October 25th, so you have time to go. Learn more about the show, buy tickets and passes, and find out more about the museum's incredible collection and other exhibitions on the museum website. There's the address right there. Carolyn, this show is in the works for more than a year. Is there anything, real quickly, that you're quietly working on now?
Oh, sure, I'll reveal my secrets.
Okay, she's not giving it up, okay.
Wolf Kahn is coming up on his centennial year of his birth, and we are looking forward to having that exhibition next summer.
Amazing
Stay
stuff.
tuned.
All right, well, thank you for joining. We're bringing you back to do that next time. As always, thank you, Vermont, for learning and exploring with me today, and thanks to the team that makes Across the Fence possible. I'm Amy Finley. This is Across the Fence. Come back and let's